Alright folks, how's it going? Cams Campbell here, your host, and welcome to the Chapter 8 analysis of Doctor Zhivago. This will be going out on YouTube, which you might already know if you're watching, also as an audio podcast, and as an essay on my Substack over at camscampbellreads.substack.com. So, if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to be a week behind. Because I put these out as unlisted videos and then post them as embeds on my Substack. So that's kind of a perk for the Substack readers. And also that's where you'll get downloadable PDF. If you want to download the essay and take it away somewhere more comfortable, you can do that as well. I'll have the images removed from the post so that you won't use up lots of ink. But of course the images will be included in the video and on the essay, not in the podcast. Because, you can't do that, can you? Right, so this was quite short. It's only 10 parts. A nice short chapter. And let's get into it. So Yuri and Tonya and Alexander Gromyko, Tonya's father, are on their way to Varykino in the Urals. Yuri and family have arrived at the Urals, and the contrast with Moscow couldn't be more stark. Quote, "From now on, they were in a different territory, in a new and different provincial world, which had created a gravity of its own." There's a nice image here of the Urals. Looks like autumn, with the trees and beautiful oranges and yellows and the mountains in the background. Pasternak describes the earth black with oil. The southern Urals is a fertile region. A passing sentry tells Yuri that it's time to plant the crops, which is precisely what he would be doing were it not for this civil war and this plague of counter-revolution. Getting political. Yuri gets back into the train carriage. Tonya tells him that the sentries have explained what's happening and that the passengers are all congratulating Yuri on having escaped from Strelnikov. There are some new passengers on the train, including one Samdevyatov, another name for you all to contend with. Yuri comments on his name too. Quote, "With a name like that, he ought to have come straight out of an old Russian ballad, complete with a bushy beard, a smock and a studded belt. Deviate. In Russian, Sam means self and Deviate is the number 9. Such names are given to characters in Russian folk tales, so Pasternak is having fun by giving a Soviet-era lawyer and businessman a folk name. Samdevyatov is local to the region and knew Yuri's father. He also knows Lara. Tonya warns Yuri to be careful. Samdevyatov is a Bolshevik. Samdevyatov told Tonya that the railway station at Uryatin has been damaged in the fighting, so the train is being redirected right past the station nearest their destination, Varykino. Yuri and Samdevyatov talk during the journey, with Samdevyatov pointing out local landmarks as they pass. At times they have to shout over the noise of the train to be heard. Gasparov argues that by layering narratives that move at different speeds, Pasternak allows the reader to, quote, symbolically overcome time, and by association, quote, overcome death. It's the same symphony metaphor we discussed in Chapter 1, which I find fascinating. I see the novel's main theme as being the overcoming of death. I've got a quote here from the book Lara by Anna Pasternak, and this is a section towards the end of the book which I just happened to read this morning. Despite having meditated about death, written about death, prepared for death, death had not entered his life. So we're talking here about Pasternak. It was not part of his world. They did not have any common ground. Death had not managed to enter him. It had simply substituted itself to him. Quote, "There is no death. Death is not for us," Boris wrote. "There will be no death because the past has passed. It's almost like this. There will be no death because everybody has already seen it. It is too old and everybody is bored with it. But now the new is in demand and the new life is eternal." End quote. The two men carry on their discussion, and Yuri makes his feelings about Marxism known. Clearly one of those moments that caused Pasternak so much trouble with the Soviet authorities. Quote, I don't know of any teaching more self-centred and further from the facts than Marxism. I don't like people who are indifferent to the truth. End quote. And that's from Yuri. The woman working the points on the railway looks familiar to Samdevyatov. Can it be Glasha Tuntseva, he wonders? Who might Glasha Tuntseva be? See Part 6 below. Samdevyatov explains that he's a lawyer. He works on, quote, peculiarities of the transitional period. He knows the region like his own backyard, within a 100-mile radius. He doesn't believe that the estate manager, Mikulitsins, will receive them well at all, and that living off the land is a utopian dream. Another problematic phrase from Yuri. Quote, there you are a Bolshevik, and yet even you admit that what's going on isn't life, it's lunacy, it's an absurd nightmare. End quote. He was a brave man, old Boris Pasternak, although he didn't take too kindly to being called old at the age of 68, as we learn from Anna Pasternak's excellent book, Lara. Quote, Boris was incensed at being addressed as old fellow in Olga's presence. According to Olga, he still thought of himself as young and healthy and the hero of the hour into the bargain. Who's Olga, I hear you ask? It's Olga Ivinskaya, who was Pasternak's lover. At the time he was married to Zinaida, his second wife, but he was in love with Olga Ivinskaya. And they lived quite close when Boris was at his dacha at Varykino. Olga lived in a dacha just over the lake, and Boris used to spend time between both houses. It was an interesting life. Yuri ponders turning back, especially after hearing that it was unlikely Mikulitsins would receive them. Samdevyatov goes back on what he'd said earlier and says that Mikulitsins will huff and puff, but then he'll melt and let them stay. Seemingly he's one of the kindest men you'll find. Samdevyatov then tells the story of the Mikulitsins. Mikulitsins arrived in the Urals region from St. Petersburg 25 years ago. He married one of the 4 Tuntseva sisters, Agrippina. They have a son, Liberius, who goes off to fight in the Great War. Agrippina dies just before the revolution. Liberius returns a decorated, quote, fully Bolshevized war hero. Samdevyatov asks Yuri whether he's heard of the Forest Brotherhood. He hasn't. He then explains to Yuri who the partisans are, and I'm glad for that, as I wasn't sure myself. Liberius is the commander of the partisans belonging to the Forest Brotherhood. Mikulitsins remarried. His second wife, Helen, is an ingénue, both by nature and intention. Mikulitsins was a socialist revolutionary and had been elected to the Constituent Assembly. This was formed under the provisional government after the February Revolution and was overthrown by the Bolsheviks after they failed to secure a majority. It met for just a single 13-hour session from 4 p.m. on 18th of January to 5 a.m. on the 19th of January 1918. Yuri realises that father and son must therefore be politically opposed, something that was common in those days. And indeed, it's still common today. The 3 remaining Tuntseva sisters live in Uryatin. Avdotia works at the library. Glasha does a bit of everything. She's the one that Samdevyatov thought he saw working the railway points. And Sima has become, quote, a bit touched in the head. She's got religious mania. The train reaches Samdevyatov's station and he alights. Tonya says to Yuri, I don't know about you, but I feel he's been sent to us by fate. I think he'll play some helpful part in our lives. Will he now? Yuri agrees, but he's worried that they will be more conspicuous at Varykino than they were in Moscow, given that Tonya's Kruger relations are so well known in the region. Yuri, Tonya and family alight at Torfyanaya. It sounds idyllic. Quote, They were struck by the silence, the emptiness and tidiness of the station. It seemed strange not to be surrounded by a milling, cursing mob. History had not caught up with this remote provincial life, which had yet to become as savage as in the capitals. End quote. I wonder if that's how Pasternak felt at his dacha in Varykino. Although it was only 50 kilometres from Moscow, it must have felt like a different world in many ways. Tonya has a visceral reaction to the feeling of the place, and instead of coming out with what she had planned to say about how Strelnikov might have planned to have them arrested as soon as they alighted, she instead bursts into tears of joy. In the Zhivago affair, authors Finn and Cuvée describe Sergio D'Angelo's trip from Moscow to Varykino, a journey Pasternak would have been intimately familiar with. Perhaps he was drawing on this when describing Tonya's elation upon arriving at Torfyanaya station. Quote, on May the 20th, 1956, two men took the suburban electric train from Moscow's Kiev station to the village of Varykino, a 30-minute ride southwest of the city. It was a blue sky Sunday morning. Spring had pushed the last of the snow away just the previous month, and the air was sweet with the scent of blooming lilac. The station master asks after Tonya and then goes on to ask about Moscow. Alexander Gromyko introduces the family, and the station master informs him that Samdevyatov had called ahead to ask that he look out for them. He recognises Tonya as being a Kruger as soon as they mention Varykino. It turns out the station master and Ivan Kruger had built the road together. He warns Tonya to be wary of mentioning the family connection in times like these. The station master calls Bacchus to get a horse and cart ready to take them to Varykino. At the mention of Bacchus, the travellers are reminded of the local legend they'd heard of the man with an indestructible set of steel bowels. We're treated to a wonderful description of the scenery as the family is taken by cart to Varykino. Tonya wonders out loud whether this Bacchus could be the same Bacchus that they were told about. It can't be. That legend is over 100 years old. The driver is a hoot, coming out with old songs and addressing his mare by a masculine name and patronymic, and speaking to himself in a rural dialect. He tells Tonya that he recognises her as a Kruger. He'd overheard their talking about Bacchus and tells them that the Bacchus of legend died some 40 years ago. He's surprised to learn that news of the Forest Brotherhood has not reached Moscow. The family's first meeting with the Mikulitsins is painful. It begins in silence and ends in noisy confusion and absurdity. The Zhivagos are embarrassed and the Mikulitsins are dumbfounded. Why did the Zhivagos think it was okay to impose like this? But all the Zhivagos want is a corner of any old tumble-down hut and a kitchen garden. Tonya points out the family connection to the Krugers, and Mikulitsin asks how she could even mention that name. Mikulitsin had grown up a revolutionary and had served in the Constituent Assembly. He's worried about how it will look, but how does he know the Zhivagos' politics? Mikulitsin relents and brings the family into the house. It seems that Samdevyatov was right. Quote, well, there isn't any point in squabbling in the yard. We can go inside. Not, of course, that I can see any good coming of it, but we see as in a glass darkly. This last phrase is translated in P&V as, quote, but these be the dark waters in the clouds, the shadow-scripted murk of secrecy. While I'm not a big fan of P&V's translations, what I do like is that they provide rich footnotes. They tell us here that the, quote, phrases and rhythms are loosely based on Psalm 18:11. Quote, he made darkness his covering around him, his canopy thick clouds with dark water. They certainly knew their Bible. Even Bacchus made an allusion to the Bible when shouting at his horse. Yuri and Alexander make plans. They need to repair their lodgings and then get planting as soon as possible. They share a meal with their hosts, and Yuri is taken with Mikulitsin's study. Quote, what a splendid study. It must be a perfect place to work in. A real inspiration. I can hear Pasternak here. He was quite fussy about where he wrote and meticulous in keeping his study tidy and free from distraction. Quote, Pasternak is methodical in his writing habits. He first puts a watch on his desk, draws a pencil from the box he keeps there, and writes in longhand, reusing every sheet of paper, once on each side for separate works. Pasternak says, it's not only economical, but it's more cosy. The paper is not so fresh. It belongs to me, you might say. And that's a quote from Time magazine, published in 1958. They look at some photos taken by Liberius with the stereoscope that he made himself. If you grew up in the 70s and 80s as I did, you might have had a stereoscope called the Viewmaster. I've got an image here to the red plastic Viewmaster that I would have had as a kid. And then an image of the Brewster stereoscope from 1870, which might look a bit more similar to what Liberius would have had. Liberius still hasn't settled down, but he's now out capturing district after district for the Soviets from Komuch, an anti-Bolshevik provisional government that had established its own military force in the Volga region and was fighting to restore the Constituent Assembly, which the Bolsheviks had dissolved. We mentioned that earlier. Remember that Mikulitsins had been a member of the Constituent Assembly. Tonya is surprised that they have real sugar, biscuits and tea. Helen Mikulitsina asks Tonya a series of science questions, then says they'd had a wonderful science teacher at the school in Uryatin. His name was Antipov. Quote, some people say that this scourge of ours, Commissar Strelnikov, is Antipov, risen from the dead. But it's only a silly rumour, of course. Or is it? His reputation precedes him. And that's it for Chapter 8. Nice and short, but we've got a lot of new characters on the board. We've got the Mikulitsins. We're in a new place entirely. We've got Tonya and Yuri and Tonya's father living at a small estate called Varykino in the Urals. And they're about to put themselves into a little hut in the backyard that they have to fix up and get planting. As we said earlier, it's time to get planting. So that's the scene set for the next few chapters anyway, and I'm looking forward to sharing the next ones with you in the next essay. So let me know what you think. How are you enjoying it? This is a nice short chapter, so hopefully it's given you a bit of time to catch up if you're falling behind. But even if you are falling behind, it's no big deal. These essays / videos / podcast episodes are going to be out there indefinitely, so you can catch up at your leisure anytime you want. And if you want to make comments after next week or the week after or the month after or the year after, I'll still get notifications and we'll still be able to continue the discussion. So, all that to say, if you're too busy and falling behind, don't fall off. Just keep up as best you can, and I'll be glad to have your company at any time you manage to catch up. Right, that's me for this week. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate your company, and I will see you next week. That's us at halfway, by the way, isn't it? Yeah, end of chapter 8 of 16, so we're halfway. Right, that's me. See you later. Bye.